Well, Michael, Reasons to Believe is a science faith organization. A lot of people think our goal is to reach scientists, but our mission field is much broader than just scientists. And we live in a day when science is kind of almost like a god, and
Yes.
a lot of people may not consider themselves scientists or engineers, but they respect those folks.
Yes.
And those are really the people I think we're trying to reach. People who trust science. They may not understand it, may not know much about it, but they respect it.
Good.
And I'd like to hear what your thoughts are on what we can do to better reach those folks for the Christian faith.
Well, I first of all applaud you for your mission. I think it's, as a scientist, it's very important, I feel, for people to respect science. It's no different than people interacting with other people.
Well, you know, it's a biblical principle, Michael. The Bible tells us that God gave us 2 books. We talked about that.
Yes. And
So of all people, we should be encouraging people to... I like to tell people, if you're a follower of Jesus Christ, it's not an option. You are a scientist. You're commanded to be a scientist. You're commanded to be a theologian too, of course.
That's interesting. I mean, I've never thought of it that way, but I don't think I would dispute that. And actually, you're saying that calls to mind, there's a sermon that I've preached before. I'm not going to preach the sermon now, so don't worry about it. We don't have the time. But it reminds me of the thesis of the sermon, which is that Solomon, in my opinion, was the first scientist recorded in ancient literature, in the Bible, in the Old Testament, rather. And I say that because you remember when God wanted to reward Solomon, and he said, whatever you want, Solomon, tell me what you want. Now, you know, that's like somebody today saying, well, Hugh, what would you want? Or, you know, some random citizen, what do you want? A lot of people might say, well, give me $1 billion or something like that, right? Some kind of material wealth. What did Solomon ask for? Wisdom.
Wisdom, yeah.
And he became the talk of the world, of the ancient world, right? I mean, people came to... And there's indications in the Bible that he became a scientist. He was very interested in animals and the environment and so forth and so on. So anyway, that's just an aside. So even in the Old Testament, we see respect given to science. And even who was it? Jacob, who did, you know, kind of biology experiments with the sheep, as I recall, right? Well, one with the spots and not spots. So that's like genetic engineering.
You got Isaiah. So I think we can make a case that the big Bible authors, they were scientists.
Yeah. So the point we're both, I think, agreeing on is that the Bible expresses, and really one I think could go as far as to say is to command respect for science. Command respect for people who are trying to understand God's creation, trying to understand its rules and to live by those rules, to use those rules to their advantage in a wholesome way. So first I want to commend Reasons to Believe for having that respect for science. It deserves it. Second of all, as far as your question is concerned, specifically, how could you encourage your followers to further understand science and its relationship to faith, which is, for me, very, very important as well. Because the respect we give to science, we should also give to the Bible, I believe. I think there should be mutual respect between those 2 great worlds, as I call them, these 2 great giants, you know, belief and reason, right? So I'm very excited about that. I'm very excited about those 2 worlds having mutual respect. So I think that's first and foremost how you can promote healthy dialogue, as opposed to being a screamer or being argumentative all the time. I get so turned off by people out there on both sides who just want to scream and insult and nonsense like that.
Well, you know, the American church doesn't have a really good reputation for being welcoming to engineers and scientists and people who enjoy science.
Yeah.
Do you have any counsel for the pastors out there or elders of churches on how they can be better at reaching out to these folks?
Yes, and my advice I want to say this in a humble way, because I don't want to come across like some big know-it-all, because I don't know it all, not by a long shot. But I really would like to, and I pray about this all the time, Hugh, I would really like to see more and more churches in America especially, but around the world, quite frankly, Stop being so nervous about science. Stop being so fearful about science. I think what's happened is that their impression of science has been corrupted by some loudmouths who have tried to hijack science to browbeat Christians, to browbeat the Bible, to browbeat God. But these people don't represent science. They don't. As you know, the scientific method in and of itself is agnostic. It doesn't take a position on the existence of God because it's not designed to. The scientific method is designed to investigate the material world. It cannot pass judgment on something that is purported to exist in the immaterial world, i.e. God, above all.
Well,
so
most scientists are introverts. I think people get the wrong idea because they hear the loudmouths.
Yes.
And they think that represents the scientific community.
But they don't. You know that.
They're the minority.
They don't.
Yeah.
And so my advice to pastors is, can you please stop being so nervous and fearful? Because as you know, when you fear something, you're more inclined to hate it. That's the reaction, right?
Or to discourage people.
Or discourage people from going there. Now I ask you, Hugh, if the church or any other representative of the Christian faith, out of fear of science, discourages parents, discourages kids to go into science, what do you think is going to happen? You're going to create a vacuum that is going to be filled by non-believers.
Right.
So then you have no right to complain that science is full of non-believers because you have been an instrument in making that happen. So if pastors could just please listen to me, there is nothing to fear about science. It almost reminds me of, speaking of giants, remember when the Jews were in the wilderness and they were contemplating the promised land and they got that report back, oh gosh, you don't want to go there. There are giants and there are many people who quaked in their boots. Okay, then we don't want to go, right? And I just fear that we're seeing something of the same thing, that there are loudmouths out there and saying, that are causing the pastors to think, oh, we don't want to go there. We don't want to go to science. We don't want to embrace science. We don't want to validate it. We don't want to befriend it because it's out to get us. It's out to get God. It's out to get the Bible. No, it's not. These loudmouths are, and they're trying to use science to do that. But science itself is not doing that.
Well, the Bible tells us that science is the ally of the Christian faith. And if we can somehow persuade pastors, hey, it's not an enemy,
yes,
it's an ally. You
yes,
need to embrace it.
Yes.
You need to encourage the young people here to pursue careers
yes,
in the STEM fields.
And then maybe you can have a positive influence on the way science is presented, right? I think that when the Bible and the New Testament, when Jesus commands us to love the Lord our God with everything we have, including our minds, including our minds, I, as a scientist, am using my mind to understand God's creation. The scientific method is brilliant at providing me a way to understand rationally what God has created. What's wrong with that? You should embrace that. You should celebrate that. You should encourage your parishioners. You should encourage your congregations to embrace that, to be a part of that. It's a celebration of God's creation.
Yeah, and the whole mind thing, every time you go to church or a class, Sunday school, Bible study, you need to learn something you didn't know before.
Yes. Amen.
Yeah.